Hello my friends and welcome back to EVE Online with me, Mark from DadX, our first video of 2023. I trust you've all had a good break. Mine was a little extended due to a chest infection and a sore throat that left me sounding like a cross between a bison and a Dalek, but I'm pretty much back to 100%. The Christmas break was also quite notable because my youngest child turned 21 and my oldest alt turned 12. But as many of you know, for the last few years, and in fact most of the content on the channel has been based on alpha clones and how to get the most out of them, how to learn the game with them, and how to get confident, how to get rich, and make the most of what you can use as an alpha. And it's no accident that I'm in a Drake right now, my lovely alpha Drake, because battle cruisers is, I'd say from my experience, about as far as you can really take it in terms of fitting the ships well, flying them well. You can go into battleships, but we'll look at skills later. That becomes a real strain, especially on a limited free skill queue, of course. But today, however, we're going to talk about what I feel are the best reasons to go to an Omega account, have full access to the full game, if that's the decision you make and that's the direction you want to go in. Because I've hit those walls. I've played as an alpha the majority of the time, to be honest with you, for the last few years, because I find it really challenging and really interesting to do so. Now, what upgrading to an Omega subscription really does is very simple. It removes the barriers on the skill queue so you can learn more skills, and it doubles the speed at which you train skills via the skill queue. But I know where I'm playing and I think, oh, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that, or that would be handy. I do have the facility, I have to admit, where I can just log in an Omega and do the sites that I know the alpha can't run, or deal with the situation the alpha doesn't really want to get into. But a lot of you don't. So this isn't about encouraging you to spend money. This is not about telling you if you haven't got an Omega account you're not doing it properly, because I think I'm at the point that you can participate in New Eden quite fully without a subscription. Get yourself a nice selection of ships, have fun, learn how to play the game and get the most out of those ships, and above all, get a lot of ISK to have even more fun with. Now we're going to start with a single module, and I think it's the only kind of single module that is a real game changer that you can't use when you're an alpha and you can when you're Omega, and it is the cloaks. You can fit a cloak on any ship, including the Tech 1 ships you can use as an alpha, and that's where you really notice, especially when you can use cloaks on other characters, the difference. So here I am in my venture. I'm on a low sec mining site. I want to be ever so careful. So I'm finding my way around. Anyone comes into local I don't like the look of. Anything on D-scan I don't like the look of. I just hit my cloak as long as I'm far enough from everything. We're off the D-scan. Chances are people passing through the system may not even notice we're out here. That's about as safe as you can be. The increase in your security by being able to just cloak up pretty much as you need to is incredible. Obviously this also applies if you're out exploring. You can cloak up while you're scanning down the sites. You could cloak up on a site as long as you're far enough away from everything if there's something going on you don't like, and again just disappear from the D-scan and hopefully just escape people's notice completely. So that is a very, very useful thing to be able to do that you simply cannot do when you are an alpha. And obviously if you go into a wormhole looking for gas in your venture, which you can do without a cloak, I've shown that numerous times, but having a cloak makes it a lot safer. Second ship you could put a cloak onto to change your life would be your hauling ship. The cloak micro warp drive trick, which I'm demonstrating here, which is a very simple technique to minimize the amount of time you could possibly be locked on a gate as you're leaving, is immense. Yeah, it's just so much better to know you can do this if there's anyone on that gate. As an alpha you have to keep your wits about you. If there is somebody there in a very fast locking ship and you're not in something that can get off grid, you've got no option really. You need to get a little bit lucky. But with the cloak micro warp drive trick, as I showed in the video recently about how to be harder to gank, you can increase your security when just moving around New Eden greatly. And remember, this applies to any kind of ship. We even did it in that video on a barge, didn't we? On the Procurer. You just got to practice the technique and fit appropriately. Other than that, if you're an alpha, you need a sub 2 second ship. Is going to be a Sunesis or an Incursus, something like that. Again, as per that video, which I shall link above now. You align, you file a cloak, you file a micro warp drive for one cycle. As the micro warp drive finishes its cycle, you decloak and you hit warp and you're off grid that quickly and that safely. Smart bombs will still get you, you could get unlucky, but you are much harder to catch now. But it's offensively I miss the cloak the most for sure, and here I can just cloak up my cormorant. I'm at my little perch, I can keep an eye on these asteroid belts here. When somebody shows up on the D-scan as on one of those belts, I can go down and say hello. I might lurk up on the warping points for data sites, relic sites that I've scanned down, hang out by a wormhole, who knows, but nobody will know I am there. Hunting as an alpha, you have to either be somewhere and wait for somebody to land on you and hope for the best, or you need to get a little bit lucky where you land on grid with people, because you're out of control really, and they're also going to know you're there, so be more aware, you would think, at least. And notice these are all cloaks supplied to Tech 1 ships that an alpha can fly normally. These aren't even involving anything else that comes with being an Omega. That's why as a single module, cloak is there for me. Put a cloak on a ship, it kind of changes the game, depending on where you are, offensively or defensively. I keep saying cloaks are a module. Obviously there are 3 of them. The top of the hill is the Cobra Ops cloak, which can only be fitted to a very select range of ships, such as T3 cruisers like this Tengu. So if you combine the cloak with a much more high-tech ship, you've got the facility times 10. The added bonus now is that I can warp around cloaks, obviously, which means I can get from perch to perch. I can go out to a deep safe to deactivate my cloak, get it back on to sort out timers and stuff like that, without ever appearing on the D-scan, which is brilliant. Of course, I can stay cloaked until I choose to decloak on grid with you and aggress you, and many ships that can fit Covert Ops cloaks are bonused to lock up very quickly after they decloak, so hunting becomes a different game completely. The Astero is a ship I would suggest you don't actually use without a cloak. It's the only ship I think you can fit a Covert Ops cloak to that isn't a Tech 2 ship. The reason they're so expensive is because it's saving you that skill training. I wouldn't recommend using one without a cloak, but once you've got a cloak on them, they are very, very useful hunting tools. Much more exciting as a hunting tool than they are as a hacking tool, because a Heron can do that. So why can't alphas use cloaks, even the simpler kinds? Forget the Covert Ops cloak, fair enough that that's a very high level end of the game. I think the answer's simple, and I'm going to show you now actually. I'm going to find a site in local, we're going to warp up there cloaked. Now this is obviously a PvE side of the game, but we're going to warp up to this site, they're not going to know we're there, and we can just see what's going on. And this is why alphas can't cloak. If alphas could cloak, there'd be cloaked alphas everywhere, in very cheap, very simple fits, maybe just a Heron and a cloak, just looking and watching and dropping bookmarks, and I think they would be abused. I think the first explanation for the limit on an alpha account is simply that it would be abused. Now obviously here it's rats I've got on the overview, and I can suss out what's going on up here before I choose what to do about this site and how to engage it. It could just as easily be a fleet of miners on a low-sec site or in a wormhole, somewhere such as that, and I can just sit here at my leisure seeing what they're doing, what they're up to, but marking the asteroids they're mining. So I can give myself a nice close warping point, or I could just get over nice and close to them. My friends come into local and warp straight to me, and they're all upon them. Fantastic. So we've looked at cloaks, and cloaks go on ships, so let's just look at the ships next, shall we? If we open up the ship tree, you can see the alpha is heavily restricted by these little roadblocks here, the Omega symbols. From Corvette to Battleship, we're there. Battleship, I haven't even bothered training on this alt because I just don't think you're going to be able to fit it that well. The Praxis is the alpha battleship of choice as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you can fly these ships pretty effectively. You got access to the Navy ships, which are all very useful and a good step up for the alpha who's got money to spare. And you can get various jobs done, as I've shown you, up to about 4 out of 10 dead sites, belt rats, all that's good stuff. You can do all that with your alpha ships. 5 out of 10, a bit of a stretch, but it can be done. But beyond these barriers here, we have the Tech 2 goodness and the Tech 3, of course. Now I could go into a lot of detail here about ships, etc, etc. We'll leave that for their own individual videos. But to generalise, when it comes to fleet operations from small gang up to really large fleet ops, Tech 2 ships offer a lot of fleet support options, whether it's EWA, whether it's the Force Recon ships, popping sinos, staying invisible on D-scan, doing the recon, getting the tackle in, assault frigates to get in again and tackle and stay alive. For the solo player, you got your covert ops ships to go out exploring or to go out hunting with. Assault frigates are great for PvE. And then we got the Marauder for blitzing those level 4 missions. And we got the Black Ops for being very naughty indeed. Of course, we've also got Sinos involved in all this Tech 2 goodness. The Sino would have been a module that got named by itself previously, but the game changes that restricted them to the ships that are beyond the Omega barrier has made them much more part of the mix now. So I'm not really going to go into the detail here. Some of these ships are just so much fun to use. Flycatcher, dropping bubbles in wormholes, the Stalk, etc. Bushin ships off of stations, off of gates. Tech 2 destroyers, the Tech 3 destroyers all have their role. They're all magnificent ships, very versatile. And T3 cruisers are a game all to themselves really. Build it how you want it. But yeah, there is so much here. Obviously we also have access as an alpha to faction ships, whether it's all of these pirate factions up to battleship size. Again, we can't go beyond battleship size, of course. The Sisters of Eve ships, the Astero, the Stratius and the Nestor. Technically an alpha could fly all these ships, but without a covert ops cloak on your Stratios or your Astero, you really are just going to be a kill melt waiting to happen unless you stay in the very safest parts of high sec, which kind of makes the ships themselves kind of pointless. So whichever race you are, you will find something for you amongst these Tech 2 ships, whether it's logistics, EWA, being sneaky, being dangerous, being very hard. You could be a heavy assault cruisers, assault frigates. They're very, very fun tanky ships to fly solo. It's all here. As I say, I won't get sucked into the detail of any of this because I'll be here for days if I start. Before we move on, we've mentioned the Astero twice in this video already, and for the third time, and it is a charm, you can get your hands on this splendid scope syndication skin. Leave a comment down below, please. Do you agree with me about Amiga and the best reasons to get an Amiga subscription? Do you agree that the alpha limits are about the right place? Let me know what you think down below. This is all just my opinion, so I'm very, very happy to hear yours. Remember to leave your in-game name in your comment, and you've got a chance of getting your hands on one of these fine skins. And I think the limit for an alpha to not be able to fly Tech 2, Tech 3 ships and ships larger than battleships is fair enough. You know, you don't get everything if you're not paying. That's kind of a fair principle, isn't it? I'm not going to argue with that. There are exceptions to that Tech 1, Tech 2 divide, which I have deliberately avoided because they're one of the sections of this video. But the next section is going to be the skills. Now, as I mentioned, all that Turn Omega really does is open up the whole catalogue of skills for you and double the speed of your skill queue. So let's look at the skills. But I'm going to look at this and really explain how this affects the difference, beyond the simplistic one of not being able to fly those ships and use those modules. So if we look at some of the basics like armor, shields, and this is all skills showing on these screens. So, you know, I'm pretty good. I can't get the last levels of the compensation skills, so the resistances don't get quite the boost. When it comes to gunnery, I can get Tech 2 small turrets, Tech 2 medium turrets, large turrets I can train up to level 4 if I wanted to. I think I have for my Naga, but there's a lot of skills here I can't learn. There are also a lot, if I reduce this down just to my skills, just for a bit of clarity, there's a lot of skills here you can't learn to level 5. So you're missing a few percent here, a few percent there, but it does stack up, as I will show you. Same situation with missiles. I haven't got Tech 2 heavy assault missiles or heavy missiles on this assault yet. I will get them. They're a big lump of skill points and time on an alpha account. So this might be a reason if your first month of Amiga, after you've got your cloak, I'd probably train these skills up. In fact, if I had a 3 months Amiga or treated myself to one, I'd probably get both of those skills pretty much trained up in that period. That's one way you can use Amiga time, just to boost the skills of your alpha rather than to go into the full Omega game. But again, that's another option. Navigation's an interesting one, and I'm going to show you all skills here because there is a very key one. and that is fuel conservation. Although it's a very low level skill, an alpha can't train it, and that skill reduces the afterburner capacitor need. That really does hamper alphas in terms of cap stability for some fits. Gila fit I can think of specifically off the top of my head. That particular limit there, I would say, is to stop people AFK farming, basically. When BNIs were the go-to AFK ratting ship in nullsec, it was a fuel conservation skill which you needed up to, I think, level 4 to do it, off the top of my head. So I think this one's really about cutting down on the botting and the AFK shenanigans. Spaceship command, we can't train any ship up to level 5 as an alpha, and you can never train a hauler skill over level 1, which is cutting down quite a lot the actual cargo capacity of your Nereus, your Iteron, etc, etc. On the engineering skills, we can't get thermodynamics to level 5. As an alpha, you can't learn any nanite skills. So using nanite paste to repair modules on the fly is just cripplingly expensive. It's not really worth doing. And advanced weapon upgrades, the cap player does squeeze the power grid on some fits. I'm thinking particularly of my alpha cormorants, where I can't fit Tech 2 neutron blasters. Because of the power grid requirement, I have to stick to ions on there. I can do it if I mess with the fit, but that involves cutting the tank or the DPS basically. Drone skills, we can use light combat drones up to Tech 2. Medium drones we can train up to level 4. We can get heavy drones, but I haven't needed them on this particular alt. So Tech 1 light drones, but no salvage drones, no repair drones, no mining drones, no EWA drones, no fighters, etc. Obviously, because we can't even fly the ships that would launch them. Quite effective with those Tech 2 light drones, to be fair, but your Vexor even is not going to be quite the powerhouse it could be with the drone skills that an alpha is permitted. Alphas could once use Tech 2 medium drones, but that was taken away the same time as access to level 4 missions, again because of concerns over farming and botting, which again I think is fair enough, to be honest with you. And then the most restricted area skill wise, and it is its own section of this video, is the whole area of industry, logistics as in DHL rather than repairing, production, PI, trading, mining. All of those things are heavily restricted. We'll look at the skills very quickly. So there's no PI, production, very limited, resource processing, so much you can't do, and you can't even reprocess your ore into minerals very efficiently to make moving them around better. Obviously no tech-free subsystems. Trade, heavily restricted, so it's not the kind of alt you're going to use for market trading. Science, we're allowed 1 skill. There you go, so we're not doing any of the clever stuff whatsoever. Fleet support, no. Structure management, we've got anchoring 1, so we can use a mobile depot or an MTU. But as I said, we'll talk about that limit in its own little section. What I wanted to do really, because a lot of this stuff with the skills is quite self-evident. You haven't got the skills, so you can't fly that ship. But what I'm going to show you now is the fitting for this Drake, and this has Tech 1 ham launchers on it right now, because that's all this alpha can fly. But then I'm going to show you over here the same fit, exactly the same fit, but flown by an Omega clone. Now this alpha is pretty much fully trained for his Drake, apart from those Tech 2 missiles. The Omega is fully trained as an Omega, so taking all the skills up to those level 5s that are relevant to this. So the alpha's got, let's simulate the fit. The DPS goes up from 418 to 500. The HP from just under 69,000 to nearly 76,000. And the resistance is all increased there on the Omega fit. Targeting's increased with 10% faster. Even the drones have got about a 15-20% DPS boost there. And that is the difference all those background skills are making. As I say, it can be much more apparent as in the cap stability on a passive tank Gila fit. But here it's just all over the place. The Omega is always going to fly the Drake, provided those skills have been trained, of course, better than the Alpha can. And I don't think that's something that people really consider quite as much of an issue as it actually is. And this applies to any ship from a Merlin up. So here we are in our venture. Why are we in our venture? Simply because it is the only industry specific ship, apart I guess from a Tech 1 hauler, that an Alpha can even fly. We can't even get into the barges. Now, as I mentioned in the skills section, the restrictions on industry, and by industry in this context I mean everything from harvesting, reprocessing, production, research, hauling, trading. every aspect of the way your skills are greatly limited if you get any at all, and you really can't make much of a go of it. The best use for your venture, as I've shown many times, is to get into a wormhole or low sec and get some gas. They're very cheap, they're very safe, they're a great way to learn your way around and make 30 mil a venture load rather than whatever you can make out on those high sec belts. I know some alphas use battleships with mining lasers on them. I can't imagine how long it takes to pay off a battleship hull these days mining in high sec. So if you want to get into industry to any kind of level whatsoever, you need an Omega account. Now the reasons for that I think are pretty self-evident. It's all farmable, it's all very passive. There'd be alpha accounts everywhere. They don't even need to be logged in much more than once a day or even once every few days if you had them there sitting doing research, etc, and production runs. Yeah, it would be too easy for the game to be flooded with alpha accounts doing these more passive activities, PI included of course. Imagine everybody would have, you know, how many alpha accounts would you have doing PI if they could? I'd certainly have one or two, wouldn't you? So it is a real pain. If it's the industry side of the game that really interests you and piques your interest, you really are stuck if you don't turn to Omega. You can get going, you can have a look, you can try it out, which is all very good, which is really what you think about it. An alpha account is in a sense a trial account. That's what it replaced, was the sort of 21-day, 28-day trial accounts that we had in the olden days before the alpha account even existed. So you get to learn the basics, the very basics of industry and mining. But you want to take it any further, you're going to have to put your hand in your pocket, or you're going to have to earn your ISK to buy your Plex in game, which isn't impossible for an alpha at all. I have done the maths of how many clone soldier tags you'd need to get. But we're going to look at that side of EVE, the financial side of it as it were, and what EVE is as a game and its structure these days in another video. I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to go into the details of industry limits because I've told you the exceptions. You can mine in a venture and you can do some very basic production. You're even hampered on your hauling because your cargo hold capacity is greatly limited and you can't ever fit a cloak to keep your hauler safe. If you want to get into industry, Omega is most definitely the way to go. Well look guys, I'm going to leave it there for now. Please leave your comments down below. I've given you 4 reasons. The cloak as a single module, just the whole selection of ships, the extra performance you'll get out of the ships you've already got and been flying with the extra skills that you can learn, and the fact that you can participate a lot more fully in the whole industry economics side of the game. But leave your thoughts down below in the comments, please. I'm always happy to hear what you think. I might have overlooked something. I might have got something you think completely wrong. I'm always happy to hear it. Leave the video a like, please, if you've enjoyed it and found it interesting. And subscribe if you want to stay in touch. We're just about to hit 8,000 subs, which is pretty amazing. We shall have some more content out soon. I've got a bit more free time now. I actually changed job just before Christmas, quietly. So it's been a bit hectic getting into the swing of it. But once I've settled down, I should have a bit more time for a bit more EVE and a bit more videos. So fingers crossed there. But for now, my friends, take care of yourselves and each other. Remember, even is believing. Fly brave and goodbye.